My name's Max Webster. I am 6'2", I have white skin, messy curly hair, white shirt, and I'm 40 years old and use he, him pronouns. Um, I am one of 8 people making a production of Macbeth this year. There were 8 productions of Macbeth, which I was annoyed and I initially surprised about, and then I reflected it's the most famous play in the English language about reality denying politicians with blood on their hands. So I thought perhaps maybe it's not such a surprise. But I want to talk for a minute about how there's the Green Book at the centre of what we're talking about, but how that also expands outwards as a lens, climate crisis, a lens through which we can look at absolutely every aspect of our practice, including the content of what we're putting on stage. That might sound a little bit strange when talking about Shakespeare, but I think Shakespeare is already thinking ecologically. The 16th century is the beginning of the time in the world in which human intervention is changing the weather. And as Elizabeth talked about, The Tempest is a play that starts with a freak nature accident and has at its centre an image of a First Nations person, Caliban, being forced to deforest, cut down trees. Macbeth is a play that starts on a blasted heath, a place where nature has been destroyed and broken down, where animals are obliterated into different parts, an eye of newt, a leg of frog. And in that is caused by Macbeth, who is described in the first scene as explicitly male, his sword is phallic 3 or 4 times, and explicitly technologized. His cannons are high-tech, doubly redoubled their power. So the play begins with an image of gendered technology destroying nature. And it ends with one of the most extraordinary images of Western theatre, of nature, of Birnam Wood, coming forwards, marching forwards, to destroy tyranny. So I suppose one of the first things I thought about what we could do is not have anything on stage the whole way, no props, no set, to speak of just a plain white platform, and then at the very end reveal the reality of the whole situation. We will see the whole of Birnam Wood. But more than that, it's interesting to think about Macbeth as an exploration of violence, because in a way, what we're talking about when we're talking about climate change is we're talking about violence and how we got there. A little detour. I have, when we started thinking about this play, I have 1-year-old triplets, which means that a year ago they were in intensive care, which is normal for triplets. Multiples are born early, which is right biologically. But every night when they're in intensive care and I was sleeping over at the ward, I had a nightmare that their incubator cot was on fire. And it might have been because the fire effect I was trying to tech at the time didn't really work. But I think probably it was also about a sense of their future being blocked up. And what that means that the future of my children, our children, is somehow going up in flames. We don't know much about the Macbeths in the play, but we do know that they've lost a child, and in a sense, for them, the future is blocked up. And for us, in so many ways, our future is at risk of fire, as in my dream, and we have a different choice of action for it. We can either campaign and work for change, or we can go down the line of denial, removing ourselves from facts and thinking the world's burning anyway, and grab as much as we can, which I think is one of the currents underpinning the right-wing and resurgent fascism. So, if this is one of the things happening in the play of Macbeth, what would happen if we put ourselves in the head of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth? So what we're going to do at the Donmar is experience the whole show through binaural headphones. So literally we see things through their perspective, that the world, which the Macbeths are unable to really imaginatively engage with, is not going to be visible until the very end. And we see nature descending. So the whole play happens in their mind. And that means that the witches can be figments of their imagination, located accurately in space. And it means that the voice and sound of their dead child can walk through the space talking to them and haunting them. And I suppose the aim of that is partly an act of radical empathy and investigation, to think what it's like to be inside the head of someone enacting that sort of violence on the world. And also a thought about what's it like to ask an audience, ask myself, to sit in that uncomfortable position of acknowledging the ongoing violence and damage that we as a society are doing to the world. And it spills out into so many other areas of thinking about the production, because, as so many people have talked eloquently about today, that the system which has led us to this crisis is based on a prejudice and othering of other genders and other racialized identities. That means that when we think about feminism in the text, that too needs to have an angle on it, which comes through climate justice and thinking about how we might going to reallocate text in the second half to stop Lady Macbeth falling out of the play. How we think about the representation of race, too, comes into this conversation, isn't separate from this conversation. So in our production, we have Kush Jumbo, an English actress from the global majority, interacting from a diverse but predominantly white Scottish company, and what that means to have a woman from the global majority disrupting a white patriarchal structure. That, too, has a climate angle in terms of the story. The music, too, has a climate angle because if the witches speak of a kind of ecological, interconnected sense of knowledge, that seemed to me that we ought to be thinking about Scottish folk tradition as the sound score from the show. And, of course, we need to think about the physical aspect of the production. And as we know, there is no such thing as a new idea. So the binaural headphones are going to be borrowed for Complicité that made the encounter. And the glass, we're going to have a glass box at the back where some of these sounds for the headphones are going to be made. And they come from that glass comes from the National Theatre's production of Phaedra. Thank you very much. We're currently looking for Burnham Woods. For anyone who has trees in stock, please let me know. I was talking about this to an actor, and he said to me, that's a rather extreme approach to Macbeth, all through headphones and all through the perspective of two characters. And hearing that, I didn't say it, I thought, well, maybe this isn't really extreme enough, because what I feel increasingly is that we're living in an exceptionally extreme time, that we're living in a crisis that is very hard to hold in focus and very hard to hold enough space for in our hearts. And what increasingly I feel, and what increasingly I try to work towards, is to create extreme acts of thinking and feeling so that we might be able to meet this crisis with an equal intensity, that we might be able to meet it, give it enough space in our lives to be able to look at it properly, and hopefully exit the theatre with enough emotional resource and energy to start to fight. Thanks very much.